Pat Stay. Warm up the game disc. September 2nd, 2022. Pat Stay was battle rap's technician. Crisp angles, sly humor, composure under pressure. 2 days before he was killed, he dropped the warm up, the game disc, with a glossy cinematic video. And there's something poetically on brand about that timing. His last piece of work is a disc constructed like a battle round. All timing, pockets, and smirking haymakers. The record immediately soaks up meaning because of what happens next. In the early hours of September 4th, 2022, he was fatally stabbed in Halifax, and the community searched for patterns, asking whether the record and the killing are connected. Police had nothing to say about that. Local coverage frames it as a homicide in Halifax, not an industry hit. But in fan memory, Warm Up became something like a final statement. The video's production value adds to the myth, turning a standard disc into a monument people revisit. When supporters play it back now, they hear a veteran still rising. No run out, no fade, just clean execution and the sense that there were more rounds to come. That's the ache inside the final record frame. An artist known for composure leaves behind a track defined by control. It isn't prophetic in subject matter, it's definitive in craft. The last line lands, the beat fades, and the timeline hardens around it. Warm Up becomes both a high point and a period. King Von, welcome to O-Block, October 30th, 2020. King Von's, the demon from O-Block. His stories felt like tightly edited short films, street legends told in present tense, names and corners pulled into focus with the confidence of someone who lived it. 1 week before he got smoked, he released Welcome to O-Block, the only album he saw come out in his lifetime. It's not a diss project. It's a home turf manifesto, polished production framing Von's most complete writing. The title read as Pledge and Postcard, an embrace of Parkway Gardens, a declaration of pride in his home rather than provocation. Unfortunately, he would eventually lose the chance to walk the streets he called home because, in the early hours of November 6, 2020, a fight outside an Atlanta lounge escalated. Shots were fired and chaos ensued, and Von was hit. Reporting later emphasizes the clash between two camps. Fans pick apart lines for closure, point at the sequencing, frame the cover art in tributes. The music itself still breathes. Detail-rich narratives, hooks that slide, the sense that a larger arc is underway. That's the sting of Last Recording here. Young Dolph, Talking to My Scale. Video, September 13th, 2021. Young Dolph's brand is independence turned into ritual. A businessman's patience wrapped in a hustler's grin. PRE chains gleaming while the verses count money like prayer beads. In September 2021, weeks before the ambush in Memphis, he pushed Talking to My Scale, a video that functioned as both a song and a mission statement. There's no theatrical war drum here. It's Dolph doing what he always said he'd do: stack, invest. Look out for his people. Enjoy the spoils without apology. That's why the clip takes on weight after he's gone. It reads like a calm before a storm nobody saw coming. A final look at an artist who made boss into a daily habit. When he shot at Makita's homemade butter cookies on November 17th, 2021, the city's grief rewires his catalog. Suddenly, ordinary flexes feel sacred, and the video's easy confidence feels like a goodbye we didn't recognize in real time. Rumors inevitably bend toward rivalries and alleged plots, but court filings and coverage emphasize conspiracy dynamics rather than a lyric-triggered hit. He's just another young casualty of these violent streets, killed just to inflate another dead man's ego. MO3, late 2020 singles era, e.g., I'm the Truth, Broken Love. MO3's catalog has always felt like a diary pages set to melody, pain, pride, and flashes of gospel resolve. In the months before he's killed on November 11th, 2020, his feed is active with records that lean vulnerable as often as they boast. I'm the Truth rolls like a mission statement. Broken Love with Kevin Gates threads heartache through street survival. None of this is dressed up as a fresh diss. It's everyday testimony from a Dallas star who's grown comfortable letting hooks carry the heaviness that verses unpack. The tragedy lands on a weekday morning, a chase, a freeway, panic creeping into dashcam angles and eyewitness posts. After he's gone, the record most people attach to his name, Outside, Better Days, with OG Bobby Billions, explodes into an anthem. Only It flowers posthumously, which distorts memory. Fans swear it must have come first. It didn't. What he leaves in life is a run of songs about telling the truth, choosing loyalty, trying to hold love steady while moving through noise. Those play differently once he's gone, The last recording lens flattens timelines, so it helps to pause and hear what he's actually saying in those final uploads. He sounds locked in, a writer sliding between melody and confession, a man stressing legacy over drama. The Freeway headlines make you forget that. The music corrects you. It says he was working, honest, wounded, and aiming up. The Notorious B.I.G. Last recording, Hypnotized, March 4th, 1997. Hypnotized came out on March 4th, 1997, 5 days before Biggie was shot and killed in Los Angeles. The single was built for radio, polished production, clean punchlines, and his trademark control over the beat. It was not a diss and did not address rivals. Because of its timing, the song later carried extra weight, but at release, it functioned as the lead push for a major album. After March 9th, attention shifted to the investigation, security questions, and the unresolved status of the case, not to the record as a cause. The video's luxury imagery and his relaxed performance became the last moving snapshot of him while alive, which sharpened the contrast with what followed. In practical terms, his final release in life signaled momentum and reach. It supported a commercial run rather than a feud narrative. The meaning fans attached later came from the calendar, not from the content. Hypnotized stood as proof of craft and command in his final week, and it explained why the rollout had been positioned for success. The tragedy turned it into a marker, but the record itself remained what it always was: top-tier execution at the center of a chart campaign. Tupac Shakur, How Do You Want It? June 4th, 1996. Tupac's final single during his lifetime was How Do You Want It, released June 4th, 1996. The A-side aimed at clubs and radio, while the physical single paired it with Hit 'Em Up on the B-side, which targeted rivals. That combination showed how he operated in 1996, commercial moves and hard disses running in parallel. He was shot in Las Vegas on September 7th and died on September 13th, 1996. Toss It Up followed posthumously on September 26th, which sometimes created confusion about what counted as the last in-life release. The clean timeline did not change. How Do You Want It was the last single he saw out. Later drops arrived after his death. The case continued to generate developments and theories over the years, but none of that altered the discography order. The single itself did what it was designed to do: extend radio dominance and maintain his visibility, while the B-side documented the public feud. In short, the final single in life was a standard hit with a diss attached to the package. The shooting and death came months later, and the posthumous activity belonged to the next chapter. La Capone, Play for Keeps, posted July 29, 2013. Le Capone's most visible release before his death was the Play for Keeps video with Rondo No. 9, posted July 29, 2013. It presented him as an emerging talent with tightening delivery and growing presence, and it spread widely in the weeks that followed. On September 26, 2013, he was shot after leaving a studio and later died. Over time, viewers treated Play for Keeps as the practical endpoint of his public output because it was the clip most people had watched close to the incident. The song carried aggression typical of the scene, but did not function as a last-minute targeted diss. It read more as a crew anthem and a calling card. The comment history that built up afterward focused on potential and momentum rather than direct cause and effect. For anyone mapping the facts, the sequence was clear: a breakout video at the end of July, a studio-leaving shooting in late September, and a catalog that remained small but influential. The last recording people saw while he was alive showed why his name kept circulating after the tragedy. There was enough on display for listeners to imagine the next steps, even though those steps never arrived. Pop Smoke, Christopher Walken, January 16, 2020. Pop Smoke released Christopher Walken on January 16, 2020, about a month before he was killed during a home invasion robbery in Los Angeles on February 19, 2020. The single supported the Meet the Woo 2 run and proved he could scale his sound without losing the drill energy that distinguished him. The video used archival imagery and street procession visuals that fans later rewatched for unintended symbolism. Investigators and reporting emphasized a robbery scenario, including discussion of social posts that may have revealed a location. Court proceedings later produced convictions and sentences. The record itself was a commercial single, not a diss, and it served its role as a project anchor. The closeness of the dates made audiences attach meaning that the song did not contain, but the underlying facts stayed stable: a lead single in mid-January, a fatal robbery in mid-February, and a career that was moving toward mainstream dominance when it ended. The track's cadence and voice showed why the rise was happening. The case details explained why it stopped. The final release in life stood as a clear example of momentum, rather than a spark for conflict. Nipsey Hussle, Racks in the Middle, February 15, 2019. Nipsey Hussle released Racks in the Middle on February 15, 2019, roughly 6 weeks before he was shot and killed outside the Marathon store in Los Angeles on March 31, 2019. The single reflected his approach: disciplined bars, business-first themes, and pride in building infrastructure around his community. After his death, the song won a Grammy, reinforcing how listeners read it as a capstone statement that summarized his philosophy. Prosecutors later presented the killing as the result of a personal dispute that escalated. Eric Holder Jr. was convicted. The record did not target rivals or contain threats. It was a standard single with a high-profile video. The dates lined up cleanly. Final single in mid-February, death at the end of March, trial outcome later on. The meaning that grew around the song matched what he had promoted for years: process, consistency, and ownership. The final release in life showed his principles in practice and required no reinterpretation to hold its place after the tragedy. Juice, WRL Bandit, W, Youngboy, October 4th, 2019. Juice WRLD's last new single as a lead artist while he was alive was Bandit with Youngboy Never Broke Again, released October 4th, 2019. He died on December 8, 2019, after a medical emergency at Chicago Midway Airport that was ruled an accidental overdose. Posthumous projects and archived songs followed, which sometimes caused confusion about the final in-life release. Bandit was the last new single he witnessed. The record blended playful boasts with the emotional tone he often used, where celebration and vulnerability sat next to each other. It was not a farewell and not a diss. The song's performance and the catalog that arrived later explained the scale of his impact without changing the order of events. The tragedy reframed it as a marker, but it remained exactly what it had been at release, a hit that showed why his music connected. Takeoff. Messy, video, October 31st, 2022. Quavo and Takeoff released the Messy video on October 31st, 2022. Hours later, on November 1st, 2022, Takeoff was shot and killed outside a Houston bowling alley. The close timing led many fans to revisit the video for hidden meaning, but it was a stylized concept rather than a forecast. Police and reporting described an argument at a private gathering that escalated into gunfire. The song itself highlighted Takeoff's tight pockets and clear delivery, the traits that anchored his work in Migos and in the Duo project. The facts remain simple: a final video posted, then a homicide linked to a confrontation. In his catalog, Messy marked where the music stood right before the incident: competent, polished, and still building a lane for his voice outside the group's original framework. XXXTentacion, S.A.D., March 2nd, 2018. XXXTentacion released S.A.D. on March 2nd, 2018, and was killed during a robbery on June 18, 2018 in Deerfield Beach, Florida. The single addressed depression and loss and later reached number 1 after his death. The posthumous video staged a funeral of his former self, which fueled speculation about prediction and symbolism, but the legal case centered on a robbery motive and led to convictions. The song did not function as a diss. It stood as a major release that predated the incident by several months. Listeners attached meaning because the subject matter was heavy and the timing was close enough to invite comparisons. Yet the investigative record stayed focused on the crime, not on lyrics. The clean reading treated S.A.D. as a successful, emotionally direct single that captured why his audience grew, a blend of melody and confession, without linking it to the event. In the last recording frame, the dates and the motive kept the narrative clear. PNB Rock, Love Me Again, September 2nd, 2022. PNB Rock released Love Me Again on September 2nd, 2022, and was shot and killed during a robbery at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles in Los Angeles on September 12, 2022. Public discussion initially focused on whether a social media post exposed a location, but police outlined a robbery plot and brought charges that fit that theory. The song itself was a straightforward, melodic plea about reconciliation. It did not address rivals and did not escalate conflict. As listeners returned to his catalog, this single served as a clear endpoint for what he put out while alive. It matched his strengths, sing-rap phrasing, and simple, repeatable hooks. And it explained why his music continued to get play afterward. The tragedy did not change the facts of the release timeline. It only changed how people heard the last track, as a final entry that emphasized melody and feeling rather than confrontation. Mac Miller, Swimming, August 3rd, 2018. Mac Miller's final project, released while he was alive, was Swimming, which arrived on August 3, 2018. The album documented a sober, methodical approach to recovery and self-management. Fewer party anthems, more measured reflections, live instrumentation, and spacious production. Singles like Self-Care and What's the Use set the tone. Introspective, mid-tempo, and focused on discipline rather than quick fixes. On September 7, 2018, he died from an accidental overdose involving fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol. In the years after, Swimming was widely paired with Circles, issued posthumously in January 2020 as a two-part concept, Swimming in Circles, that mapped a shift from survival to acceptance. Legal proceedings later led to multiple convictions tied to the fentanyl-laced pills that contributed to his death. Those outcomes did not change the basic chronology of his catalog. Swimming was the final release he saw in the world. Circles and subsequent material were assembled and issued after. For audiences and critics, Swimming read as a turning point, musically mature, less impulsive, and clearly arranged around keeping steady. That framing grew stronger, not weaker, with time. When people revisited his last in-life release, they heard careful writing, restrained tempos, and a consistent attempt at stability, which explained why the record stayed central to how his career was remembered.